Hi, it's Connie Carswell. This is my second video tutorial, and as promised, we are going to be making Frankie from Big Brother 16. As with all of my characters, I like to loom the attachments first because it makes it really difficult if you only have one loom to get the attachments made if they require a loom once you have your bands laid out for the body. You'll have to bear with me. I am having some trouble with my lamp. It keeps turning on and off by itself, so we're probably in for a bumpy ride. So, at standard rainbow loom offset position, the bands I will be using are neon orange, blue, white, gray, skin tone, pink, and yellow. And we'll start with the arms. I like to start at the bottom of the loom in case I need to attach hands. I will be incorporating the hands into my layout here, but if I didn't, I would like it to be at the bottom. So I'm using double bands throughout, and I'm going to count up 6 pegs from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And yes, that's about as high as I can count. I did get to 7 last time, so that's good. So 2 gray bands, 2 white bands, 2 orange bands, 2 skin tone bands, 2 more skin tone bands, and we will cap this with a single skin tone band wrapped 3 times. Putting it on counts as 1, 2, 3. And once again, I have not made this ahead of time, so I'm flying blind here. We'll hope that my design for Frankie will turn out. And we are going to do the same thing for the other arm on the other side. So 2 gray bands, 2 white bands, 2 orange bands, 2 skin tone, 2 more skin tone, capped with a skin tone band wrapped 3 times. And now we can loop this, putting our hook inside the cap band and looping up. And onto the other side, making sure I catch both bands. And now I'm going to grab a spare crochet hook to use as a holding hook, and I'm going to take these off and set them aside. And now I will make the ears and the nose with skin tone bands. For the ears, I'm going to take a single skin tone band, wrap it around my hook 3 times, and I'm going to thread that onto a single skin tone band, double looped, by making a figure 8, folding it onto itself, and threading it onto these 3 bands. For my second ear, same thing, take a single skin tone band, wrap it around the hook 3 times, and thread it onto a double loop skin tone band. And that's the ears, which I'm going to put on my holding hook. For the nose, I'm going to take a single skin tone band, double it, wrap it around the hook 2 times and thread it onto a double loop skin tone band. And that's my nose. I will add it to the holding hook. Next comes the eyes, and for the eyes I'm going to use E-beads, and I have them pre-strung on, and if you've watched my previous video you'll know that this is the grass that you would put in Easter baskets. It doesn't break, it doesn't fray very easily, and I've been using this same piece ever since I started looming 4 or 5 or 6 months ago. So I am going to take a white band and double it. I'm going to thread this floss through, and I'm going to slide one of the E-beads onto the floss and down onto the white band. And then I will pull out the floss, and I'm going to put these 2 ends of the white band onto my hook, and the other 2 ends of the white band onto my hook. And I'm going to repeat that. A white band, double loop, thread the floss through the middle, and slide an E-bead down onto the end. And then onto the white band. And again, you can also use bands to make the eyes, and instead of an E-bead you would use whatever color band you prefer and wrap it around your hook 6 times and then thread it onto the double looped white band. And you would do that 2 times, and then whether you're using E-beads or bands, we take a single skin tone band and we slide the eyes onto the skin tone band. And I'm going to put this on my holding hook. Now we are going to do the attachments for the legs. And I need skin tone bands, and I am going to put 2 skin tone bands from the 4th peg to the 3rd peg from the bottom, 2 more skin tone bands, followed by 2 dark blue bands. And this will be capped with a dark blue band wrapped 3 times. Same thing on the other side. 2 skin tone bands, 2 more skin tone bands, 2 blue bands, capped with a single blue band wrapped 3 times. And we're going to loop these. And now for the other side. And I don't want to jinx myself, and I hope I don't, but so far so good with the lamp. It hasn't gone out in a while. Maybe it's decided to cooperate. And I'm going to remove these from the loom and place them on my holding hook. You could use a toothpick or a skewer or a thin dowel or whichever you would like as a holding hook as well. Paper clip works. And now we're ready to band, and I'm going to start with pink for the hair. If you watch Big Brother, you know that Frankie has dyed some of his hair pink, the top anyway. So I'm putting 2 pink bands from the first peg in the center to the second peg in the center, the first peg in the center to the first peg on the left, and 2 more pink bands from the first peg on the left to the second peg on the left. We're going to repeat that on the right. From the center to the right, 2 pink bands, and from the first on the right to the second on the right. And now I'm going to take 2 yellow bands from the second on the right to the third peg on the right, and 2 yellow bands from the second on the left to the third on the left. Now we'll finish off his face with skin tone bands. 2 skin tone bands on the right, 2 skin tone bands on the left, and 2 skin tone bands down the center. And we're going to do this 3 times down the center. 1, 2, 3. And I like to use 3 bands for the neck, so 3 skin tone bands going down the center. And now I will close off the head with 2 skin tone bands from the 4th peg on the left to the 5th peg in the center, and the 4th peg on the right to the 5th peg in the center. And now for the shirt. I am going to put 2 white bands down the center, 2 orange bands, 2 gray bands, and 2 more white bands. And for the left side, 2 gray bands from the bottom of the neck to the next peg down on the left, 2 white bands, 2 orange bands, 2 gray bands, and 2 white bands. And we're going to repeat that on the right side. 2 gray bands, 2 white bands, 2 orange bands, 2 gray bands, and 2 white bands. And next we're moving on to the shorts. I'm using blue for the shorts, 2 blue bands in the center, 2 blue bands on the left. We're going to do this twice. 2 more bands on the left. And we'll move over to the right. 2 bands on the right. 2 more bands going down the right. Now we're going to close off the pants. Put 2 blue bands from the 3rd peg up on the bottom in the center to the 4th peg up on the left. and 2 blue bands from the 3rd peg up on the bottom to the 4th peg up on the right. And I'm going to cap this with a blue band wrapped 3 times. And now for the legs, I'm going to add 2 skin tone bands, on the right, and 2 skin tone bands on the left. And now, to double check the banding, I have got 2 pink bands going from the top center to the left and right, and 2 pink bands on the left, down the center, down the right. 2 yellow bands, 2 skin tone bands, 2 yellow bands, 2 skin tone 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 bands, closing off the head from the left to the center and from the right to the center, 3 skin tone bands for the neck, 2 gray bands, 2 white bands, 2 white bands, 2 white bands, 2 orange, 2 orange, 2 orange, 2 gray, 2 gray, 2 gray, 2 white, 2 white, 2 white, 2 blue bands going down the center, 2 links of blue bands going down the left, 2 links of blue bands going down the right, ending with 2 skin tone bands on the left and 2 skin tone bands on the right. And we're now ready for the holding bands. I am going to put a pink holding band on an upside down triangle from the 1st peg on the left and the 1st peg on the right down around the 2nd peg in the center. Next, I will use a skin tone band, again in an upside down triangle, from the 2nd peg on either side down around the 3rd peg down. I'm going to skip the next 2 pegs on either side because that's where the eyes are going to go, and the eyes will hold that together. I'm going to put a single skin tone band around the 4th peg down on the left and the right, and up over the 4th peg down in the center. For the body, I am going to put an orange band, right side up triangle, on the 7th peg down on either side, and up around the 7th peg up. I'm going to put a gray band, single band, around the next pegs, again a right side up triangle, followed by a white band, followed by a blue band. And now we're ready for the attachments. And I have my legs here, so I'm going to put them on my other hook. And I will attach one leg to the left side, and one leg to the right side. My next attachment is the eyes, and they are going to go on the 3rd peg down from the top on either side, on the left and on the right. I'm going to separate the eyes a little bit, and then I'm going to use my hook to grab one of the bands holding the eyes, and I'm going to pull it up and over the third peg down from the top. And that's the eyes. My next attachment is the nose. And again, I do the nose a little bit differently, so I'm going to put my nose on the hook and just leave it there for now. If you would like to attach your nose now, you can. It goes on the fourth peg down, and all you would do is attach it the same way we've done with the legs. Just place it over the peg. And next we have the ears, and I will attach one ear on the second peg down from the top on the left, and the other ear goes on the other side, the second peg down from the top on the right. And next are the arms. Slide those onto my hook. And this goes on the sixth peg down on the left. And the sixth peg down on the right. Did you happen to notice the light get a little brighter? I told you my lamp has a mind of its own. And now we're ready to loop. I'm going to double check that I have my holding bands. As I said in my first video, one of the two mistakes that I make is forgetting to put on the holding bands and forgetting to loop bands. So we are going to loop starting at the center peg at the bottom, and I'm going to grab the top two bands, and they go to the right, and the next two bands go to the left, and now I'm going to go to the bottom and loop up the left side all the way up to the neck. And once I get to the neck, I'm going to do the same thing on the right side, being careful to stay inside the holding bands and watching to make sure that I have a teardrop shape every time. I don't think I mentioned that in my first video, but as I said, I do assume that most people know the basics of looming, looping, whichever you would like to call it. So I've looped up the left side, and now I'm looping up the right side. And now we will loop up the center, staying inside the cap band. All the way to the top of the shirt. And now we are going to loop 3 bands of the neck. Don't forget that you're grabbing 3 bands here. And we will loop up. And then we want to loop the top 2 bands, which go to the right. The next 2 go to the left. And at this point in my previous video, I attached the mouth by wrapping a skin tone band around my hook 2 times and sliding it onto the bands that go up from the 5th peg to the 4th peg. But I'm going to show you a different way to attach the mouth this time, so I'm just going to loop those as normal. I'm going to grab the next bands and attach my nose, And if you have already attached your nose to the fourth peg, all you would do is loop these bands up and around your nose and up over the third peg. So now we can go on to the left and loop up to the top. And then I'm going to go down and grab the right bands and loop these, making sure to stay inside the holding bands. And I will loop up the center and the last two bands. Now we need to attach a slip knot. And for this, I'm going to use 2 pink bands. I've placed my hook down inside all of the bands. I've grabbed these 2 bands. I'm going to pull them up through and form a slip knot. And now we're ready to remove it from the loom. We just want to double check that we have looped all of the bands. And check sideways as well. You can sometimes tell if you look sideways if you've missed a band. And I'm removing from the bottom of the peg up only because had I pulled it off from the top, it would stretch the figure more, and sometimes you may want that and sometimes you don't. So if you don't want it stretched any, then start at the bottom and work your way up. For some pegs that have more bands than others, I like to put my hook inside and wrap it around the peg, or roll it around the peg, I guess, to remove them, like the pegs on the arms and the neck. And then the rest should come off fairly easily until we get to the top. And we're off the loom. And this is what it's going to look like. Doesn't look like much. He looks like he's doing aerobics or something, which wouldn't surprise me, but this character is not going to. So I'm just going to straighten him out a little bit and pull his ear down where it belongs and poke his eyes to the front. And I would like his arms to be down a little bit to the sides. So I'm going to place my hook inside the teardrop shape and pull down on the bands. And that will make the arm point down. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And have his arms pointing down. To fix his hand here, by grabbing the cap band and straightening out those bands. And again, on this figure, I would like his feet to be going to the outside, so I'm going to put my hook in through the teardrop shape of the shoe and pull it to the side. And the same thing with the other foot. Put it through all the bands and pull it to the side. And now his feet are pointing outwards. And I'm going to do the same thing with Frankie's waist as I did with Zach's. I'm just going to squeeze it a little bit. Like I said, I didn't want it defined as much as a double loop band would have done around the waist. So I'm just squeezing the bands in a little bit. As promised, I'm going to show you how to attach the mouth now that he's off the loom. To store my C-clips, I use a goldfish food container that I've washed out. And yes, this is all the C-clips I have. I know a lot of people have buckets and buckets and buckets. I am borrowing this technique from Cheryl Ann Spinelli. I've seen her attach a mouth to her characters this way. So thank you, Cheryl. I am going to put my hook in on one side of his mouth and grab the bands and pull them to the back. I'm going to put my hook up through the other side and grab the bands and pull them back through. And now I'm going to take my C-clip and secure these bands. I've caught both of them so I can remove them from my hook. And then I will just adjust the mouth. And I have to tell you, this method is much better than the one I did by wrapping the band around my hook twice. You can position it better, it stays in place better. So definitely, definitely, thank you, Cheryl. I don't know if you got that idea from somebody else yourself, or if this is your own invention, but it works wonderfully, so thank you very much. And once you get your mouth positioned the way you want, I'm going to say that's good enough. And then we need to secure these bands, the slip knot bands, and I'm just going to put my hook through some bands at the back and pull them through. And I'm going to do that again in another spot. So they're tucked out of the way. And there you have it, Frankie Grande from Big Brother 16. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and please share if you create this, and post your comments below. Please subscribe and please like, and I'll see you next time with the next cast member from Big Brother 16.